do these, the first thing, Congressman, that you need to know about your congressman, how to get things through Congress, is that your congressmen only care about getting reelected. Right now, the only funding source available to them is corporate donations. Because, yeah, we all tried to elect Bernie Sanders last year, or many of us. I don't mean to be too presumptuous. And we're tapped out. We don't have enough money to do that every 2 years. Because they're taking all our money and corruption to the pharmaceuticals, the health insurance companies, military contractors, ad nauseum. And yes, it is nauseating.
So it sounds like you have a soft stance on the subject.
I am trying to be gentle.
Yeah.
So when you elect a big blue wave of pure people who do not take any corporate money, their first interest will be in making sure they can get reelected by passing federal funding of elections. Now, how do you get the people who are retained in the Senate and retained in the House, because there will be a lot of incumbents returning? You say, look, we'll give you a twofer. You don't have to worry about us primarying you 2 years from now, because you're going to win your election with public funding. We're going to set public funding where it has more money than you can possibly spend, meaning media saturation. And we're going to let you bring home the bacon. In fact, we're going to bring home the whole pig by passing single-payer health care. And my buddy Joe Friedman up at UMass Amherst has done the work, and you can prove pretty readily that the corruption in the healthcare industry alone is worth about $1 trillion a year. So when you treat everybody from birth to death, eyes, ears, nose, throat, medical, everything, teeth, everybody will be better off in 2 years. You will have a choice. The corporations will be funding opponents to the people who just gave you this wonderful new life, who saved the life of your child or your neighbor's child, who kept your grandparents on Social Security and on Medicare, which the Trump administration is cutting, pay for their tax cuts. Or you can vote for the guy who brought you single-payer health care and preserved Medicare and Medicaid and anything else you want. Because once you turn the corner and you have people who can vote for something without worrying about offending their corporate donor owners, then you can pass all these things at once, and that's called a nonviolent revolution. And that's why I'm here, because I think we can save the world for our grandchildren.
So
If we don't,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
it's criminals.
I think we've bled into a couple issues there, but I like that we're ending this with a plan.
Okay.
We've got a plan on how to move forward, guys, and we can thank you, Tom Wells, for that. The past hour has absolutely flown by. We do have a little bit of time left, so I'm just going to open it up. You guys have any questions that you want to get out there? Yeah.
I had a question, and I think Dr. Couchman, you really mentioned this issue, and my own personal experience is the fiction that everyone here who is here documented are noble and great people who follow the rules, and that people who are not documented are the criminals. That's a great fiction that has been created. And I know from my own family experience, because you mentioned the 10-year rule, I remember going back to northern Mexico every year so we could go to the consulate there and then get across the border. And because the reality was you couldn't legalize yourself then. That was between 75 and 85. I think at some point, beyond the current fight over the wall and DACA, we've got to get a conversation with the public about if we continue to have rules that are bureaucratic and impossible to comply with. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we'll have the same arguments. We'll have the same people being held as hostage because of their legal status. And populists will continue to say, those people are destroying the country. Some place in the, we have to get to the discussion of how do you just simply make it easy to be regularized. And that conversation right now feels impossible to me.
Well,
And it's not just now. I mean, the wall and Trump is today. I saw something, look, I remember Ronald Reagan, I thought he was a wacko, but I saw a debate where he and George Bush, Sr., competed with each other to be the most decent about immigration and about Mexico. It's almost like we created an environment that would give a tool to a demagogue by having people unable to comply with the law.
Well, what was created during the presidential campaign is hysteria against the immigrants. They were painted as debtors in kind. And this xenophobia of everything foreign, and on that platform is basically working on the people's emotion. Now they will be feeling they will be betrayed or feel betrayed if anything this immigration is not passed. What they want is just collect all the immigrants and send them back. There is also interesting sentiment. Some immigrants say, well, I came to this country legally as a student. I was here on the visa or as a tourist. Then I got married. Then I got a job and blah, blah, blah. I came here legally. So why do these people who came here that jump the border, should they be given the right
I've had people
to
tell me
jump?
that.
And my question is, why not? What do you lose? Because we were talking about the money, right? I just want to give you very fast figures because I don't remember all of them, but over 90% of DACA recipients are engaged in work sector. Then, and if they leave, then a lot of companies will lose their workforce because they will also have to train new people. Some of them not qualified. And otherwise, what will be with competition, right? So, and that's why 500 companies were addressing the Congress with a request, 500 Fortune 500 companies asking to prolong DACA. Now, specifically about how much DACA people, just DACA people, not all immigrants, because there are about 11 million of them here. DACA is only, what, 1.5 million something, about under 2 million. So, if the DACA people are allowed to stay here, they will add billions of dollars to the gross domestic product. If they receive permanent legal status, the GDP would increase by approximately, get ready, $22.7 billion a year. And over the course of decades, they will increase by estimated $281 billion. The GDP will increase. And when accounting for the population that would receive work and pay taxes and so on, with the schooling that will go to school, then over a decade, the GDP will gain from the DREAM Act alone. It's about $1 trillion. Now, is it worth hurting the economy? These people were here and they're not criminal. By the way, violating immigration law is not a criminal law. A violation of the criminal law is sort of like getting a traffic ticket. It's a civil. There is no penalty. It becomes criminal if you have an order of deportation. Let's say a person committed crime or even didn't commit a crime in the court, like a DACA person for driving to work without a license or not having the blinker working on the turn signal. They arrest you, and by the way, now that they have it, in California they arrested 150 people, and most of them criminals. You know, about 2/3 of them, or 80% of those who were driving without a license to work, and they call them criminals. So they criminalize it, and if of course if it's an order of deportation, the person comes back, then it becomes a criminal offense. Only then, and then they will go to sit in federal prison maybe 20 days, 20 years, 5 years, whatever, depending upon the crime.
I just wanted, I guess to add, that's what I was going to mention. I think it's important to realize that distinction between the civil and the criminal aspects of immigration violations. It goes to the demonization, and really, with all due respect to the ignorance of some of your future colleagues, I guess, outright manipulation, right, where they use rhetoric that demonizes these people, and they're not actually criminal.
And some of the cities or states want to pass the law saying that if you are an illegal immigrant here, you are charged. It's a misdemeanor. It's a state violation. I mean, they decide still tinkering with immigration law, which are the states are precluded by the Constitution, they may not do. But even just my visa expired today, or you immediately committed a misdemeanor punishable by 5 years. Well, it cannot be by 1 year, but.
I think we have time for one more question, and then if we have any other questions, you guys are welcome, I think, to approach the panelists. Thank you for staying here so late. Sure.
What I think the problem here is a purely political one. I mean, we're all impressed by the facts here. That litany of facts that you just recited, you're assuming that you're talking to rational people when you present these ideas. What I want to know is, how do we get the message across to a nation that's now suffering with the word fake news every other sentence coming out of the chief executive of the United States?
Would like to take that
Well, for one thing, fake news is a conflict. If it's news, it's news. It cannot be fake. There's a conflict. It's like in the term.
Well, I think that we have to elect 200 new people. And we will do that. We have the opportunity. If we don't do it, the faults next year we blame on ourselves. We can't blame the people who are there now. And the problems are simple, very simple. You break the chains that bond congressmen to corporations. And then even the congressmen who are there and who've taken bad votes for decades, they will have the motivation to take good votes. And I will forgive them.
Can I just add something real quick? I mean, I guess I'm still a little bit of an optimist. I think it's easier to demonize people you really don't know, and I would hope if some of those in the public realm who are discussing those issues got to know some of these individuals as human beings, and maybe I think it'll go beyond the rhetoric. I hope.
I have talked to Ted Yoho several times. I have debated him a dozen times. And he does not break from his corporate sponsors. When I speak to him of single-payer health care, as every other country has, he ends the conversation. Well, Tom, people just have to take personal responsibility.
I think healthcare is a whole other debate we'll have to have next time. With that,
I just have a quick announcement.
Okay.
I just heard in the news that the Native Americans have granted amnesty to Europeans.
with that, thank you so much for being here. I think a good thing to take from this is to talk to your classmates, talk to your colleagues, talk to your neighbors. You never know who could be dealing with undocumented status, DACA status, etc. Because it's not something that we're going to tell one another. But once you know who's sitting around you, you can judge the person for who they are and not their status, right? And with that, I thank you so much, guys.
One thing, I'm going to leave some papers about knowing your rights that with Chantel. And then she will be distributing through your network, computers, so you can give it to your friends. So if you're stopped anywhere, you will know what to give to as a U.S. citizen or as a foreign national. You give the CBP or ICE person.